watching the MLB postseason?
A lot just happened right there.
Yo, good evening, everybody. My name's Melanie Kirby, and you are listening, hopefully live, to a Guardians season wrap-up, off-season preview episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. We got a whole bunch of characters here with us tonight to help us break it all down. You guys want to kind of go around, introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll start. Your co-host, James Ellifritz. Well, happy to be back and talking some baseball. And let's put this season to bed.
I agree 100%. Kevin Slez, owner, godfather, whatever you want to call me. Yes, I was definitely ready for this season to end.
Can we all agree that was the greatest pregnant pause in the history of Believeland Media? I'm Kevin. No, I'm Paul from Double Play CLE, and I was right. I told you so.
And
You're
I'm
the
Derek
only one.
Schmidt, and I do whatever Kevin asks me to do.
Great answer.
Whoa!
Great response.
I didn't
All
know
right,
we
you
were
said
getting
it,
that
not
deep.
us. So yeah, obviously, unless you've been under a rock for the last 6 months, the Cleveland Guardians are not playing postseason baseball this year. And I've actually been putting myself to sleep with the very few really cool highlights we had from last postseason. But like I said in my intro, I'm watching these other teams in the postseason, and I'm like, it's got me discouraged a little bit. And then I got to go watch Arizona Fall League highlights of Chase DeLauder and Kyle Manzardo hitting bombs on the backfields of Arizona to give me some kind of optimism for 2024, because I watch Austin Riley come up in the 8th inning, hit that bomb to put the Braves ahead, and then they turn that insane double play to end the game in the 9th. And I'm just thinking, I couldn't see the Guardians doing that. We'd need 6 singles. And then we'd need the runner to be like a round third to throw back to first. Like it just wouldn't have been like that.
The amazing thing about the Braves, though, is that they have players like Austin Riley, who the average fan does not know because he keeps sliding under the radar. But this is an unbelievable player.
In that lineup.
On any other team, he would be the number 1 star of that team. On this lineup, he's what, 6, 7 on that? Because you got to put Spencer Strider up there. I would argue that you could put Max Fried there. What is it? They have a third pitcher that I can't remember off the top of my head, back and forth on the IL, but Mike Soroka. Those 3 guys alone could handle a rotation, and then they're just 3 of the top players they've got. You look at this Cleveland Guardians team, and it goes back to day 1 when Tristan McKenzie went down with the injury, and we were like, uh-oh, Hunter Gaddis is starting in one of the first 4 games of this season. And we all said the same thing. I really hope Hunter Gaddis is fantastic, because to put that kind of pressure on somebody in their rookie season that early in their season was just doomed to begin with.
And it's interesting too, because it's like the team struggling the most this postseason, where the heavyweights, or this postseason, are the heavyweights of the regular season, and the Braves, the Dodgers, and the Orioles. And they're struggling the most. And it had me thinking, like, everybody wanted to make fun of the AL Central all season, and rightfully so. But does it matter if the Twins were to somehow advance to the ALCS, taking down the Astros? Nobody's even thinking about the regular season anymore. I remember they did a whole feature on how the Braves guys play every single day. They don't take days off. They don't come out of blowouts. But it's like Ronald Acuna Jr. has been ice cold lately at when they really need him most. So it's like all that stuff's cool, but when your aspirations are a World Series, those are all just participation trophies when you look at the ultimate goal of winning a World Series. It's really who gets hot at the right time. And the Guardians could do that even next year. I mean, and let's not sit here act like they didn't have a ton of adversity to overcome early with Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie. You know, Tristan McKenzie missed 3/4 of the season, and Bieber probably missed a good half of the season when it was all said and done. And we got to see what our big 3 rookie starters had, and not even talking about Daniel Espino yet. How do you guys feel about that part heading into 2024?
I think the only thing we had with consistency for the year was inconsistent. As far as streaks and losing streaks, there was never a time where we felt really good and comfortable. Like, yeah, we're out of it. Even though going into All-Star break when we were right there, it just there was just no confidence there because we kept hovering right around that 500 mark. And yeah, we were competitive in our division, but none of us felt good about that because we saw what the Twins were, and we were comparing ourselves to the Twins, and then both of our teams to the rest of the league, and it just didn't look like even if we got in the playoffs, we were going to compete. And now look at the Twins now. You know, they've made it to the next round, the ALDS. I didn't look at the score tonight, but I mean, the series is
they're getting blown out. But Pablo Lopez is a stud, and I knew that all offseason. I talked about Pablo Lopez. I did not want him going to Minnesota, and he's showing why. But I also think, too, they're probably going to lose Sonny Gray. I'm guessing. I don't really see Sonny Gray resigning in Minnesota. They have Pablo Lopez. Joe Ryan's good, but I would take Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, Logan Allen, whatever young guy, maybe Joey Cantillo's that guy who kind of takes the leap next year, gets that command figured out. Our pitching, as far as the starters go, I feel really good about heading into 2024. It's when we slide into that bullpen where I think they absolutely have to re-sign Reynaldo Lopez. You give him whatever he wants. He's a stabilizing force in the back end of that bullpen. I think Emmanuel Clase is going to be all right. He had a few different, early in the year it was the velo, right? Then it was like kind of the pitch selection was an issue as we got deeper into the season. I think he figures it out. He's too good. He's still young. I think he's going to be all right, but that's another area I think this team needs to make some improvements to kind of put yourselves back as the favorites for the AL Central.
I mean, you just mentioned Emmanuel Clase, and we're talking about how he had a down year, and he still led the majors in saves, even with 12 blown saves. I think our pitching is scary on the front half, and the back half scares me. But everybody complained about the Savale trade at the deadline. Oh, we can't get rid of Savale. We're contenders. Oh, why can't we get rid of Savale? He's not going to be here next year anyways. He was going to be trade bait. If you have a successful rotation that includes Gavin Williams and Tanner Bybee, he would have been the 5 starter out of that rotation potentially. Why not flip him and get somebody like a Kyle Manzardo? That trade is going to turn into what the CC Sabathia trade turned into for Michael Brantley. You're going to look back on the Aaron Savale trade and call it the Kyle Manzardo trade in 3 years.
Yeah, and all those people who were complaining about that deal were all the people freaking out that he started Game 5 of the ALDS last year. I remember tweeting, I'm like, I don't remember half of you when I was defending Aaron Savale starting Game 5 after the rain out last year in the ALDS. I was one of the people like it was the right decision. It didn't work out, but it was the right decision to start Aaron Savale. And then you look at it too. He had already missed time with injury this year. We know he's an oft-injured starter. And when he's even healthy at his best, like you mentioned, Paul, he's a 5th starter. And you now have a top 5 prospect in your system. Sure, we have Josh Naylor. But him and Manzardo could work together like him and Josh Bell did early in the season. There's no reason why those two guys cannot coexist. You needed more power. If it happens to come in a position you already have some pop, so be it. You find a way to get those guys into the lineup, because we're seeing as we watch the postseason, and we said it last postseason, you have to be able to hit the ball over the fence. When you're in the postseason, the competition's better, the pitching's better all the way around. you're not always going to be able to string 5 singles together to get a run home. When you're facing the Max Frieds and the Zach Wheelers and the bullpens, that these teams have, it's just not going to happen. You have to have that guy. Like, again, look at Yordan Alvarez. He's, again, going off in the playoffs this year. Didn't have a super great second half, but it's October now. The lights are bright. He's picking it back up. They need guys like that to surround Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor in this lineup. Like, that was a no-brainer to go out and get Kyle Manzardo, if you ask me. And Chris Antonetti needed that kind of deal.
And that was a trade that was made that was not for this year.
Right.
I mean, we needed to – it was definitely a blow to the mental side of the team in the clubhouse when you're hoping that we're going to add, being what we 1 game back at that time or 1 game up. But, yeah, that was definitely a trade for next year or the year after where we finally see him break through. But as far as Clase goes, too, Paul, you made a great point. He struggled this year, and he still led the league in saves. So, for me, this was what I talked about, and Derek and I covered this on a couple episodes. I think we had that discussion about the bullpen, I think was top-ranked bullpen at All-Star break, with all the struggles. And for me, I have zero worries for Clase. Had his struggles this year, but then all you have to do is turn on a Phillies game right now, and who's their closer? And you see Craig Kimbrell out there. That guy's bounced around. He's had some ugly years. But look, it's still October. He's back at it. And it's one of those things where we don't want to give up on a Clase. And I don't think we are, but I'm just saying bullpen guys, they have those years. It's just part of baseball.
Yeah, bullpens are volatile too, and I think that's another important thing to remember. Last year, obviously, that Trevor Stephan Rule 5 pick looked brilliant. How could the Yankees let him go? Look how good he is. Look at that splitter. He obviously wasn't very good this year. Tito insisted on continuing to use him in the 8th inning in those high leverage spots. He was just the guy who had earned his trust. We know how Tito was with that. But I do still think Trevor Stephan could have some value. And I think he still could have been better utilized in the 6th or 7th innings, even last year, instead of continuing to be pushed out there in that 8th inning. But when we talk about the bullpen volatility, we also have to, again, look back to the offense. Look at all those 1-run games we were in last year. That's a big reason for Clase's 12 blown saves. You're expecting every single one of those guys out in that bullpen to come in and literally be perfect. You have zero wiggle room. Anytime they walked somebody, they came around to score every single time. It was always 1-run games, and then we're all fuming at the bullpen, which, yeah, part of their job is keeping inherited runners stranded. But obviously they're humans. It's not going to happen every single time. It just always felt like through the whole season, the offense would get going, then the bullpen would collapse. The bullpen would be picking it up. The starter would only go 2 innings. Then the offense would get no hit in Houston. It's just like, I remember talking in April, like, oh my God, we haven't played a complete game yet. This is getting concerning. If it gets to May, I'm going to start to be concerned. It gets to May. We still haven't had a 4-game winning streak or losing streak. Like James said, the inconsistency all season is, I think, what made the season so much more frustrating when we couple that with what the expectations were heading in. And guys, I say it all the time. I think expectations are the thief of joy. Like, I'm sure if we were just watching this season, like we saw 2021, we've seen bad seasons in Cleveland that are nearly unwatchable. But we had our hopes set so high. Again, James, you were listening to our preseason picks. I think I had us losing to the Phillies in the World Series. Like, I was like drunk off the vibes of last year. And we're seeing why the front office sitting on their hands last offseason was so detrimental to this year, because they peaked too early, right? And that's why I think this offseason we're going to be in for a pretty adventurous offseason. I think it was that bad that it's going to kind of push them to make some changes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I didn't get to speak on the Savali thing, but he's a guy that is not needed next year. They acquired a power bat, which they need, but you look at the potential rotation, assuming they keep Shane Bieber, you got Bieber, Tristan McKenzie back healthy, Tanner Bybee, Evan Williams and Logan Allen. I mean, that's a top 5 rotation in MLB without a doubt. And you look at what Manzardo's doing in the Arizona Fall League, like you mentioned, with Chase DeLauder, and they're both killing it together. And I'm pretty excited about what we could see out of him next year.
Yeah, I don't see how Chase DeLauder could start in AA next year. I know they like to take it slow with the guys they're really high on, but I don't think Chase DeLauder has any business playing in AA next year. I mean, I'm hoping he starts in Columbus and he could be up here by June or July, because obviously the free agent class is pretty weak as far as outfielders go if you're not talking Shohei Ohtani, which obviously we're not getting. So then obviously, being a fan of the Guardians, we know we look to the trade market. So then we're kind of revisiting the trade deadline all over again. And there's a few different things the trade route that we could look for this offseason. Do they cut ties with Shane Bieber, finally pull the trigger on a trade for him while his value is where it is? Or do they let him play out the year, see what happens, accept that qualifying offer? Then you look at the outfield. Could they finally make a decision on the middle infielders? And could they package one of them, get a deal, make a deal for an outfield bat? Then you got the bullpen. Could a David Bednar or somebody be in play? What are some things? We'll kind of go around the table. We'll start with Kevin. What are some moves you would like to see? It doesn't have to be specific names, but what areas do you think need most addressed on this team in the offseason?
Power hitting outfielder, corner outfielder.
I'm wondering if like a Taylor Ward could be in play.
Possibly.
He could be interesting.
But I think that is the biggest need. Obviously, the rotation's good. Maybe, like you said, a bullpen piece. There's a couple guys. The one guy who I want to re-sign is Ronaldo Lopez. I mean, he pitched lights out after we claimed him with the Angels. I think that's a guy they need to hang on to for sure. But I'd say bullpen arm and corner outfield, power hitting outfielder.
Agreed. Paul?
The Bieber thing is going to be the thing I think that we're going to watch as closely as something that we're kind of bearing a little bit of the lead here. We don't have a manager right now. Arguably the greatest manager in the history of Cleveland baseball, 900 plus wins in his career, has stepped down after 11 seasons. Shout out to Terry Francona. Got my Tito shirt here. That is going to change this team more drastically than people, I think, are ready to accept. I think you're going to see a very bad season here in Cleveland. I think we're looking at 60 wins. And I think whoever is coming in here is going to have to earn it again.
Gotta go.
Oh, whoa.
Cavs are on.
It's gonna be rough because you go from a consistent day to day basis to right now, Jose Ramirez does not know who his boss is next year. And that is the biggest piece of this team is Jose Ramirez. When you pay somebody as much as we did to keep him and he accepts a pay cut to stay, that is your guy that you're building the entire franchise around. So I'm wondering if Jose is going to have any say in who the next manager here in Cleveland is going to be. Because there's been a lot of discussion about DeMarlo Hale possibly taking over. Sandy Alomar Jr. has said that he doesn't want this position. Kevin Cash has said he doesn't want this position. And those are the three guys that you could argue would be the best fit to keep everything the same. Personally, I would like Sarba. I think he's a much better manager. And he has a proven track record in the minor leagues. But ultimately, we need a manager before we worry about what the team looks like, because if the manager doesn't like the team, we're screwed.
In regards to Kevin Cash, he's not going to come out and say he's interested when he's under
He
contract.
can. He's under contract either way. Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, I love Tito. He's been the manager since I was in my early college years. Like, I will always forever be grateful for Terry Francona and what he's done for not just this organization, but the city. But, like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, he didn't have a great year as far as working the rookies in, lineup construction, bullpen management, Miles Straw batting in the ninth inning 62 times with the bases loaded, it felt like. There's decisions like that that were frustrating. And it was all as a result of Tito's stuck in his ways. Tito's always going to go with his gut, what he feels is right, the guys who have earned his trust, which is commendable, and players love that. And I agree with you, that clubhouse culture is going to change. And he's the only manager Jose's ever had. But I also think when Jose signed that extension, he knew Tito was only going to be around for the first few years of that. Like, they had those first few years to work together, and I think he probably accepted after that there's going to be a new face around here. But I've always said I didn't even think they were interested, like seriously interested in like a Mike Sarbaugh, Sandy Alomar, DeMarlo Hale. We have one of the most analytical front offices in the game, and I think they're going to try and go outside the organization to find a manager that's going to be on board with that. Now, the real question comes in, whatever the hell that was in Toronto, pulling Jose Barrios in the fourth inning with like a 47 pitch count, just blowing the Twins away to bring in Kikuchi. Like, whatever that was, I don't want any part of that. Like, that's taking it too far, and that's like a predetermined decision where you're not factoring in what's actually happening in the game, right? So I think there's a fine line, but I'm hearing Will Venable more than anybody, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know too much about who he is as a person or how he's going to be as a manager. That's why I haven't really tweeted much about the manager, because I'm just not sure. All we've known is Terry Francona. Like, I don't even know where to look right now. I'm lost.
Just remember, for every Terry Francona, this franchise has had a Manny Acta, an Eric Wedge. So we get this wrong, we're setting the whole franchise back a decade.
Yeah. There's a middle ground somewhere. I hope they can find it. That's for sure. I do think Jose Ramirez might have some input in it, though. I mean, he is the face of your franchise. His happiness is important. I mean, they held on to him at Rosario a year too long, probably partially because of Jose Ramirez. So, Derek, what do you want to see them add this offseason?
I know that. Yeah, I kind of echoing, we definitely need bats. And the easiest place to put a bat is in the outfield. I forget if it was you, Mel, or someone said that Stephen Kwan cannot be your best outfielder. Like, he can be a good outfielder. He can be your second best outfielder, but his skill set isn't set up to be the best outfielder on your team. Just, the way the game is. You mentioned Yordan Alvarez, he could be hurt like 6 months of the season, and the calendar turns to October, and the guy can hit monster home runs 450 feet like it's, a ground ball. Like, it's amazing. And obviously those guys don't grow on trees, so, you kind of have to find one, and hopefully with Manzardo they have a bat that they can put in the middle of the order sooner rather than later. But in terms of the managerial search, I'd like to see him kind of mix it up a little bit. I feel like anyone from Tito's staff is just gonna try to implement what Tito did, and Tito is Tito. You can be his assistant for so long, but you're not going to replicate it. We saw it in 2020 when he had to step away. You can have all the same guys and the same staff, but Tito is Tito. You can't, just because DeMarlo Hale's his buddy and has been on his staff for so many years, or before that it was Millsy, and we've talked about Cash. I personally wanted Cash, but if that ship sailed. But yeah, just let's mix it up a little bit. I know that's not something that we as Indians turned Guardians fans are used to, because we've had the stability in the front office since most of us were young. When you look at how it went from Shapiro to Antonetti to Chernoff, but as that transition went, the guy that was being replaced moved up the ladder until, Shapiro moved north of the border, and then, the shift occurred. But yeah, just let's get exciting pieces in place, and let's mix it up a little bit. Yeah, I hope it doesn't lead to an 100 lost season, Paul mentioned, but if it does, I think I don't know if we'll get any views or listeners for Guardians of the CLE podcast if they're losing 100 games.
How could we lose 100 games with that starting rotation, though?
Don't
Because our
bullpen-
bullpen is
our
not good
bullpen-
enough to hold it.
don't
our
touch
bullpen-
Tigers fans.
Our bullpen would have to be atrocious. Like, is Class A out for the year or something?
I'm very worried that something is going to happen that is going to change the dynamic of the team. I don't trust them to keep this intact. I think they're going to blow something up somewhere once they make their decision on the manager.
See,
I don't trust this front office with this. I something about it I don't feel right anymore. And
They've been really bad, though. Yeah,
You know what?
They've made some really bad decisions.
you're right. I agree with that.
Like
But then they got
Bell,
Kyle Manzardo.
Zanino.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
I want Kevin Cash. I would call Tampa Bay right now and be like, hey, we gave you Savale. At least tell us the price so that we can get our guy, because he wants to come here. And that Tampa doesn't, to be honest, I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be a baseball team much longer. I think that's going to be
Their
a
shortstop
traction
about to
team.
be in prison. Like, you think Kevin Cash wants to deal with that
God,
if
no.
he has to? Like, that's
And that was
tough.
the face of their franchise.
That'd be like that happening to Jose. Like, he probably would not mind getting his hands out of that. Like you said, the team may move. The stadium sucks. They draw no fans because they're not really in Tampa.
Dude, they drew 19,000 fans for a postseason game.
I know.
How can you justify that franchise still being there? Put a team in Montreal. I don't care. At least give somebody a fresh shot, because clearly St. Petersburg, Florida has decided baseball does not matter to them. And that's fine.
Well, when
But
you have
put it
3
somewhere that it
o'clock,
deserves to be.
you got 3 o'clock start times. People are
Okay, but
working.
Cleveland had
We had it at
one start
noon.
time.
Yeah, we
I
were
was
at
there.
noon.
It's a
I
different.
watched Oscar
but it's a
Gonzalez
different
hit the
environment.
walk-off.
They can't get anybody. They
freaking
can't get
30
anybody
degrees
during
outside.
the regular season either. That's the thing.
Exactly. That
Right.
doesn't need to be there.
Well, and
Well, I think that even though he said that, he has to say that because he's under contract. I'm not saying it'll happen because I really don't think it will. But I'm with Paul in that I'm a little sketched out with the front office handling the manager. I don't know. Hopefully they're turning it around. They did get Manzardo. I like what they did at the deadline. But this is a big decision. You guys mentioned it's franchise altering. And I just think it's that offseason where they can make a big splash. They have all the pieces. I think they know they have to capitalize on Jose Ramirez's window. That's another elephant in the room. Jose Ramirez is now over 30. Really, at any point now, he could fall off a cliff. And really, none of us could be shocked by it. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year per se, but it could happen at any time. And how stupid is everybody involved in this organization going to feel if they wasted all those top 3 MVP finish years?
Just
Like-
to be clear, that's a metaphorical cliff, right? He's not going rock climbing in
No,
Arizona
no.
or something, right?
None
Stay
of
away
that.
from
well,
Excuse me.
let me tell you about my additions. Number one, Paul, how dare you recommend 100 loss season for
I'm
next
not
year?
recommending that. I would love them to
Yeah,
go 162-0, but it ain't
I don't
happening.
think he
During the
wants
Browns
it.
season. You can't break our hearts when the Browns are actively in season.
Oh, wait.
And
The
when-
Cleveland
when-
Browns. You mean the Cleveland Guardians of the NFL, because they're doing the exact same thing right now.
No,
exact same team.
No way.
Exact same
Way
team.
two different addresses right there.
Exact same team.
No way.
One star that is just kind of there. The injuries are starting to pile up. You lose your key running back there, your key player right at the start of the season, like 1 or 2 games in, almost like a Tristan McKenzie, your starter. And then you just kind of limp along until the end of the season. Go Cleveland Browns.
Mel, the additions we need number one, our manager. I think we need to get younger. and I know you're with me on that. And then I
Yeah.
think the average age of our roster needs to get older. We need to add some veteran leadership, the same thing I said in the offseason last year, and some power to that. I don't care
Mhm.
what their name is, what side of the plate they hit on. I could give a damn less. But we definitely need some power coming out of that outfield. But you mentioned Will Venable. I think with him being Mike Chernoff's teammate at Princeton, that's a nice connection. He was part of the coaching staff with the Cubs World Series team. Currently, the assistant manager for the Rangers. So I know he's thought highly of the organization, and in baseball, he's had some other interviews where he just hasn't got the job. And maybe it's going to be here in Cleveland that we finally get him. And Paul, you mentioned Mike Sarbaugh, and to his credit, 9 seasons in our minor league system and never had a losing season. And I did hear where Buck Showalter made a comment. He was talking to Bob DiBiasio, and he said that, your coaching staff, you have about 4 guys that could be major league managers. And Sandy Alomar is not interviewing. He does not have interest in the position. He's happy in the role that he is now, and I think he will return to our coaching staff no matter who we bring in.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing, too, to see what coaches are brought back and which ones aren't.
Well, he's been locked in.
So-
Sandy Alomar has been confirmed that he's going to come back 100%. Like, he is part of whoever the manager.
Or it's just Carl Willis and
Yeah, everybody else is fair game, but Sandy's locked into his position, and
Good.
that came from the front office. And I don't know if I think that might be a concern, because now you're telling your upcoming manager, hey, this is your guy. No matter what you say or do, we want this. That almost sounds like you're putting the replacement in place in case something goes wrong and you have to blow it up again. I think that's a real concern for a future manager.
Mel,
It's
I know
gonna-
you got to.
yeah, I was just
No, you
going to
gotta
say,
bug out. I wanted to ask you a quick question. So, the reluctancy to trade prospects for the Guardians, do you think they're a little gun shy because of the Junior Caminero situation?
I think so. And I think it's also, and even to a lesser extent, Nolan Jones. I mean, look at and it wasn't just a Coors Field thing. I think a big part of that, too, was they put all their eggs in the George Valera basket. And then George Valera had the hand complications, in the offseason. Didn't really get going. Still dealt with the hand in the first half of the season. And he just didn't have the year that any of us expected to see from him. So I think 2024 is also going to be a big year for George Valera. But I also wonder, too, are they going to wait for that? Because, listen, when Will Brennan started picking it up at the end of the year, I thought to myself, please tell me that's not enough to earn Will Brennan the everyday right fielder job next year. Like, I will really, really, really want them to be aggressive in right field, and they need to use the middle infield prospects to do it. And I think that's what's so puzzling, because I don't think from the trade deadline on, they were able to learn enough about Gabriel Arias, Brian Rocchio, Tyler Freeman to know exactly what to do. And I think with all that they have invested in that position, all the international signing money, all the draft picks over the years, you need a superstar out of that. And we can talk about the manager, and I agree 100%. They can't miss, but they cannot miss on shortstop, not with all they've invested. And they have to be really damn sure. And we're not even talking about the Milan Tolentinos, the Angel Martinezes, the guys behind Rocchio, Arias, and Freeman. But I think between Arias and Rocchio, I think they both have flaws. I think if you could combine both of them into one, that would be outstanding. But they need to be really sure, because I still have a lot of questions about Gabriel Arias and his bat. And in his defense, they're not just 2023 based. These are from the minor leagues on up. I think Brian Rocchio is the more complete player. Sending him back to Columbus until the last week of the season, I don't know if that means they think that of him too, and they wanted him to play every day. That's going to be interesting to me, because I don't think all 3 of those guys are here next year. That's my bold take for this offseason. I think they are going to make a decision, and I just pray to God it's the right one. I'm always a Rocchio truther. I'd be happy to be wrong though if it's Arias. I love him too. But if it's between the two, give me Brian Rocchio. There's something, he's got that it factor. And I think if he plays every day, we're going to start to see it more and more. If he can tap into that power he had the last couple seasons prior to this year, look out. He's going to be a special player for a long time.
I agree 100% on Rocchio. He's my guy too, but watch out for Juan Brito. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and they're gonna have to fit him in somewhere too, because that makes the Nolan Jones trade a little easier to stomach, because Juan Brito is going to be really, really good, and I think he could even play some outfield if you needed him to. But again, as long as they get someone proven, so that if a George Valera, Juan Brito, some of these kids come up, you're not expecting them to go out and hit 30 home runs and be your all-star in that power bat. Kind of let these guys come along and develop at their own pace while at the major league level. And it's not as impactful if you have other proven guys in front of them that are able to carry the load.
I think one thing I got frustrated with, we knew they were out of it with a couple weeks left in the season. And this is no knock on Cole Calhoun because he played well. He was brought in hoping that he would help them, for a stretch run and make a playoff run. But they didn't, and they knew it, and they kept playing him every day in the lineup, playing Miles Star every day in the lineup. Why not get a look at a Giancarlo Noel or a Jonathan Rodriguez, one of these right-handed power hitters you'd have down in AAA for the last couple of weeks? I think that frustrated me towards the end of the season, why they continued to play Cole Calhoun instead of getting a look at one of these other guys. Yeah. Or even of George Valera.
Yeah, Jonathan Rodriguez hit profile is ugly, but I wanted to see it so bad. I was so desperate for power up here. I'm like, I don't care if he strikes out 44% of the time. Let me just see a couple of those home runs. It's ugly, but yeah, I think just in closing, I think no matter what happens, I think this is a massive offseason for the Guardians, and they cannot afford, even once they find a manager, they cannot afford to sit on their hands and not do anything. They're going to have another 40-man roster crunch. We're looking the same right when we traded Caminero back in 2021. They added a guy who needed rostered and got rid of Caminero, who wasn't even sniffing the 40-man roster yet. Let's just hope they don't do something silly like that again. Like, I don't need any more Junior Caminero trades, but I'm excited. I want the postseason to end. I want to see what we do. I want to see who our manager is so that we can get rolling, start making some moves.
Agree, 100%.
Anybody else have it? Anyone else have anything?
Not on that.
No. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in here tonight. Make sure you head on over to BelieveLandMediaLLC.com. We got you covered on all your professional sports, college sports, high school sports, with all your podcasts and written content. And while you're over on X/Twitter, make sure you follow the podcast page at Guardians OTCLE. You can catch all our episode news, stay up to date with any guest alerts we have for the off season. We're going to be trying to bring some players in for you guys again. So make sure you check us out, drop some comments, share the episode. We really appreciate it. We're still knocking on the door, Top 5 Guardians podcast. We'd love to carry that on through the off season. Hopefully they give us some fun things to talk about. But guys, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time out to come chat with James and I about this disappointing season and hopefully hopeful off season. But in the meantime, go Browns, go Cavs. They start the preseason tonight. I hope there's some exciting postseason baseball to kind of buy us some time until the NBA regular season starts, and that's what we do in Cleveland. We just bridge gaps to the next sports season when one disappoints us. But until next week, everybody, I hope everybody stays safe, you stay healthy, and go Guardians, Cavs, Browns, Buckeyes, everybody. See ya.
Paul, you can go put your Tiger shirt on now.
Can I? Oh, man. I do love a good orange shirt.